are. Good morning, gang. Welcome to the Aired Out Podcast. It is a brand new, shiny day. The wind is whipping. It's whipping. And I'm going to start out this morning by saying, be positive. Try to be positive. It's what I'm saying to myself. Because I just spent a gazillion dollars on those portable carports. And been struggling putting this thing together since Saturday. Finished late last night. Out there with the ladder and the headlamp, putting it all together. What do you think I woke up to this morning? Mangled mess. Steel pipes splintered, broken from the wind. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? At least nobody got hurt. But Murphy's Law, right? Alive and well. This morning, I have a gentleman who is sitting right next to me, Gabe Lajeunesse, who I just met just a short time ago. Man, it is an absolute pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks so much.
I'm so glad to have you in here. Kind of met you by phone not too long ago. You are a local guy. You've started your own podcast, The Abundance Agenda. Please tell me a little bit about you, who you are, what you do. The Abundance Agenda is kind of a political concept, if you will. Am I right?
Well, it's policy. Yeah, for sure. I mean, really it starts and housing is a passion of mine.
Yeah.
I think we all know we're in a housing crisis. I started a small development firm based out of Montpelier, Acre Development, in 2021. And we're trying to, do some smart growth, trying to get some infill, trying to get some housing into the community. And there's just a lot of our debates right now. You look at just across the spectrum, whether we're talking about schools, whether we're talking about hospitals, right? It's all about affordability, and they're all connected, right? It's all this, giant cycle, and housing is a big part of it. And really, the idea for the abundance agenda, there were a couple things that happened. One, Vermont Futures Project, which is, sort of an outgrowth of the Vermont Chamber of Commerce. They've been looking for a long, long time at, how Vermont can be sustainable, how we deal with the fact that we're losing young people, right? So they've been looking at for a while, but they put out an economic policy study at the beginning of the year where they sort of outlined, like, this is what it's going to take for us to work through the challenges we have. And they couched it in terms of, we have a choice between scarcity, like we tighten our belts, we don't spend money, like we just, ratchet things down, and maybe we can balance our budget that way, or abundance, right? And the idea of abundance is that we need to invest and we need to spend money. And what they show, it's just data, but what they show is that, JD, we need over 200,000 working age adults to move to Vermont over the next 20 years if we want to be fiscally solvent.
Or what? And if we don't?
Well, if we don't, our schools are going to close, our hospitals are going to close. We just are not going to have the lifestyle that we have. We're not going to have the same quality of life that we have today, and it will degrade over time, right? We just can't afford what we've built.
Man, today is November 4th, and it was not necessarily with design to have you on today, but today's election day. And Vermont, Central Vermont, right here, Barrie, Granite City is going to be voting on some really important things here. Polls have been open since 7 o'clock this morning. There's been some early balloting, but we're going to be voting today on some really important things, not just housing. Seminary Street, Article 1. I'm sure you're familiar with that, of this new housing development. I think you had Tom Lozon on not too long ago talking about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Barrie's doing a lot of really impressive things, and the votes today certainly are. This is what the discussion is about, right? It's like, and the bottom line is what Vermont Futures showed is that we just can't. I'm a fiscal conservative, but we just can't cut our way to where we need to be. So if you want to talk about the elections for a second, I mean, you think about bonds. I've heard people that are against the proposals that are being put on the ballot today. We can't afford it. Well, gee, that's not the way bonds work, right? Bonds work. there's, Vermont has a really high credit rating, right? Double A credit rating. If we're going to be able to issue a bond, it means that we've got cash flow. We can demonstrate to underwriters who are, professional and underwrite these bonds all across the country that we are going to be able to pay for this, whatever it is, the school, the housing project, whatever it is, that there is sufficient cash flow to back this thing up. And so the idea that we can't afford it, that's not, look, if a bond can be issued, you can afford it, right? Like, it's a very solid investment, right? So it's not about that. It's about, what do we want to be? And this is, again, do we want to tighten our belts? But the issue is, we cannot cut our way. You just can't keep cutting services. You're just going to end up with an unaffordable place to live. And so it's going to be what you see in some places. We lived in California at one point, and you had basically like all the working population had to kind of commute into this area. And it was just a bunch of wealthy people. You got a lot of second and third homeowners, right? The Stows can survive, but what happens to the Johnsons of Vermont, right? Do they exist in the future if we can't figure this out?
Dave Horner just wrote, "Good morning. Please remember to vote." So here's the deal, and I think you would support this, and this is something that I've been banging for years. Is no matter how you feel, exercise your due diligence. Exercise the great privilege that you have to weigh your opinion and to vote. I was explaining to my 11-year-old little girl this morning. Yeah, Dad, I already know. I heard that, but that there's countries where they don't give a damn how you feel. There's no voting.
Yeah.
You have the ability to...
Yeah, what a blessing, right?
What a blessing. Really, stop and think about that. That don't take that for granted. Go up to the auditorium today and vote. You got till 7 o'clock tonight. No bullshit, no excuses. Do it if you haven't done it already.
It's really important, I think, in a lot of these, these debates that you have about what we should do. You have a handful of people that are very active in their communities, and they show up at all the hearings, right? And so you have like the squeaky wheel are the folks that like just love this stuff and they show up, but they could misrepresent what the actual view is, right? And so then this is where we get to decide. TIF, if you look at tax increment finance, which is how you're going to take care of a lot of these housing projects, right? It's going to be future tax revenues going to come back and pay for where you're at. They overwhelmingly pass in the state of Vermont, right? Two out of three voters will vote generally for, they get it, right? They understand. But the moment that we decide to not show up and vote, it's like that, again, those people that are active partisans, right? They're going to win the day. And so we need to show up. We need to show up to those critical city council. It's hard, right? City council meetings, man, they can be so long, right? But if there's a critical one where the big vote and you don't show up and the city council only hears from the people that are against something, they never hear the other side of it, right? So voting, like, this is how we all get to come out and say, no, we believe in this. We want to see more housing built.
Brace yourself, folks, because we're going to talk about the proposed Central Vermont Career Center as well coming up in just a little bit. But Seminary Street, 31 flood-resilient affordable housing units developed by Downstreet Housing. Downstreet is also a new supporting sponsor of the Air Now podcast, and a lot of people have lots of great opinions about Downstreet, and some not so much. But listen, they're doing great things, man. Look at Fox Run. They're doing amazing things. About Speranza, the Speranza Inn there, the old Quality Inn, right down the road here.
Yeah.
What they're doing with that.
They're an amazing organization, right? We all need affordable housing. We're so grateful for Angie Harbin and the good work that they're doing over there.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful, I look at Barrie in particular, like the dollar lot sales,
Yeah.
That's some aggressive, it's tough. Montpelier's got one going on right now. They got a $1 proposal for Country Club Road that we hope we get a bunch of qualified applicants that show some interest in that. But
wow.
It takes, forward thinking city leadership to go and say, look, we don't need to make a profit on this thing. We need to create housing. Now, we need all kinds of housing. And so affordable housing is one component. There's only, so those things are, a lot of the money for that comes through tax credits, and there's only so much of that comes around each year. It can't solve all of our housing needs, and we need all kinds of housing, right? Market rate housing. We need luxury housing. You go talk to the hospital, they'll tell you they have doctors that come out and take a look around. They don't find a place they want to live. They don't find a community they feel comfortable living in. They don't take jobs out here, right?
Yeah.
Why do we have all the visiting nurses? People come up, take a look. They're like, we can't find housing in a place that we want to live, that we feel like is affordable. Those are not people that are going to live in downstreet projects, but they need to live somewhere. Right. And so where are they? I know you get another great sponsor with Effectos. I see them on your stuff all the time, right? I mean, they're, Beckley Hill. I mean, these guys, you got people that are providing housing, but there's a lot of room for a lot of people to get involved in this. And it is a crisis.
Isn't it amazing the tentacles of all of this, the rabbit holes that we can go down, how everything is related? Like you alluded to earlier, there's mental health, there's housing, there's affordability, there's the economy, there's mental health, there's drug use, there's homelessness. I mean, everything is connected here.
It is.
What's the hub? What's the hub of it? We all have different opinions about.
Well, I think almost everybody is saying housing is the key. Like if you go to, if you look at the work by the Green Mountain Care Board to look at the potential for closures of hospitals.
Yeah.
Their research, and they brought in a consultant who does this all over the country, right? But it was basically housing. Like you got to figure out this housing piece.
Yeah.
Because it's just creating this untenable, unaffordable. There's other issues. It's not the only issue, but it's that, I think it's, the one of the most critical. But the thing about it is, so are you familiar with the concept of a doom loop?
No.
Okay, so the idea of a doom loop is that it's what you're describing, that we have a whole bunch of factors that are all, they're negative, trending negative, and they're all impacting some economic factor that's trending negative is impacting another, which impacts another. And so you end up in this downward spiral, right? And so generally, when we thought about doom loop, it's been associated with inner cities, right? So if you think of like Detroit's a classic example because they've actually turned it around. So in Detroit, you have this phenomenon where it's like, the streets get a little bit dangerous and the crime gets, challenging. And so guess what happens? Employers don't, they don't locate their offices there. And then what happens? So
creates its own monster.
Then there's no foot traffic. So then the restaurants close, right? And so next thing you know, you got like this ghost town where nobody's at. Well, that's a doom loop.
How the hell do you get out of that?
And so Detroit has gotten themselves out of a doom loop it started with some big investors, some big families that have made a lot of money in that, from that community that reinvested. It starts with some big projects, but then other people start piling in.
Yeah.
Right. So they say, okay, there's some I think Barry is a great example. I saw a great presentation, the St. Albans, the city manager up there, like he just showed the transformation that's happened there over about a decade of them strategically coming in, buying little, seeing opportunities to redevelop certain areas, making some calculated risks, right? And now what you have in that place, it's beautiful, right? But it took a decade. And what happens is once you make those big investments is then you can have smaller developers. We need a lot of small developers to come in and say, hey, I can convert this to some condos. I can take this dumpy multifamily that hasn't been invested in for 50 years and frankly should probably not be, condoned for anybody to live in. And it's worth now investing some money into this place and turning it into something that people do want to live in and has some economic value. But that's not going to happen until you have some of these big moves, right?
Residual spinoff.
Yeah, right. Let's reverse that doom loop, right? It takes a lot of us, but the big moves are really important. And so I think, again, that some of the stuff that you're looking at here, I don't know enough about the tech center to really have a strong opinion on it.
Sure.
Other than to just say it is a choice. This is a choice, right, that we're making of investing in our future or tightening our belt. And again, the fact that there could be a bond there means that you can't afford to do it. It's not that you can't afford to do it. Now, whether the programs that are going to be offered there, I don't know anything about that. I don't know enough about to comment on it. But I just think if you create something, the concept of creating a place where our kids feel like I have a future, I can get a really good paying job without getting into debt, right? I can immediately come out of school and be employable, right, and contribute to a community that I really care about.
Maybe without going to college too.
Maybe without going to college, or maybe transitioning into an employer-sponsored, training program or something like that, or an apprenticeship program, right?
Starting my own business.
Starting a business, like
putting down roots.
If we create a pathway where these kids want to stay here, like, isn't that everything that we could want to create?
So Dave just posted something here, and I was just going to bring this up anyways. The price tag on this is $149 million, top to bottom.
Yeah.
Everything. They were originally estimating that it was going to be somewhere between 150 and 200. So they were actually delighted to see that it came in a mil less.
Yeah.
Dave says 149 million added to our taxes, and that's just the first year. It's not going to be completed until 2029. That means more bonds each year until then, until it's done. Let's get real training back. Apprenticeships. We will have to pay for busing too. Plus, how will it work when they reconfigure the districts? So some valid concern here.
Yeah, I think those are all. That's all. But again, you couldn't get the bond if there wasn't the money to pay for it. I guess that's my, there's enough money to put it together. Whether it's a good investment or not, that's a different sort of conversation.
Have you seen the tax breakdown for different towns?
No, I haven't.
Okay,
yeah.
All right.
But the idea of the apprenticeship, I think absolutely right. And you have seen there is it's interesting. Our young people are pretty smart. If you look at the student loan debt, I don't know exactly your age, but you look like you might be a Gen Xer, am I right?
55, bud.
Okay.
Next week.
So in our space, right, like we have the most student loan debt. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Gen X, we still are paying down student loans. That is insane. The young guys, they're not getting into a system where they're going to take out $150,000 of student loans to get a degree in puppetry or something, right? Like, it's not happening. They are, it's like the apprenticeships have doubled since pre-COVID, right? Like the number, but we need more than that. Like there's so many training programs that we could look at.
There's between 150 and 200 students that are turned away every single year because of the current capacity over at the Central Vermont Career Center.
Yeah.
And some of them are aging out.
Right.
By the time their number's up.
Yeah.
Again,
it's all about the future.
Here
to me,
this
discussion of austerity versus abundance. It's what kind of future do we want to build, right?
Yeah.
We have to look to what do we want this to look like in 50 years, and it starts with an investment we make today.
Sure.
All the things that we love around us, JD, everything around us that we love, a previous generation built. They made decisions to invest, and we get to benefit from that now.
Yeah. You had, first of all, if you're just joining us, Gabe Lajeunesse, he is a local businessman, investor.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a
financial guy.
Real estate investor, yeah.
All of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Started a podcast called The Abundance Agenda. It's on Facebook. You need to stop and go there and have a look, give a like, give a follow.
Thank you.
And get involved with your comments and share something. It's a razor sharp niche, and it's something that's really a hot button issue right now, housing in general. You just had Tom Lozon on not too long ago.
Yeah.
Recap what he said.
Yeah, I was talking to all the cities around Central Vermont, just trying to understand what they're doing on the housing issue. And the thing that Tom really contributed was the team approach that you're seeing in Barrie. Like, again, we kind of talked about some of these dollar lot sales. He was talking about some of the proactive work that's going to help people recognize that maybe you could build an ADU or maybe you could subdivide or some of these things. It's just the team approach that you have here, I think, is what it's going to take to jumpstart some of these bigger projects, like, are being voted on today, and those that will take place in the future. But it then gives people, smaller developers, smaller real estate operators, confidence in investing. You had a show yesterday about why landlords are not, they're maybe pulling up stakes. They're like, why, is it worth reinvesting in this property at this moment in time? And again, if we want to work ourselves out of this doom loop, we got to do some of these big things. We got to see some, we got to have some positive energy, and then we can make the choices. And so what I heard from Tom was just a very organized team-led effort by the city of Barrie to put housing as a major priority.
Yeah.
Now, most of the communities around recognize they have a problem, and everybody that I interviewed, they're all doing something. I would say my impression, and again, you'd have to go look at housing starts, in retrospect, let's look back and say, hey, who had more housing starts? Who created more housing? But I would say Barrie impressed me as being the most organized in their effort to address this issue. But everybody's doing something. Everybody knows they have a challenge, and everybody's trying to work on it.
The towns that don't have zoning are being creative. The family structure has changed.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of these ADUs now that are popping up everywhere.
Yeah.
One of the subjects that you discuss in the abundance agenda is subdivision and what that looks like and how possible that is to be able to get a deeper look at it, whether or not it's the right option for you, how to make, I think one of your episodes was how to make some of your property or your backyard a revenue stream.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the reality we're at, we have 1 and 2 person households, right? We've got, most of our housing stock is like 3,000 square foot farmhouse, Victorian style, like really, 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom.
All around here.
Right.
And Montpelier. My God, I mean, I was just on College Street in Montpelier.
Everywhere, Hardwick.
Oh,
I mean,
my
you go,
God.
you drive her. I mean, it's what we did, back in the day when when Granite was big and there was lots of railroad traffic and
Right.
we built these big homes. Families were different.
And then during the winter, we sealed off a lot of those rooms so that we didn't have to heat them.
Yeah.
I mean, they're huge homes.
So now what you have is you have a lot, it's mostly, baby boomers, but you got a lot of baby boomers living in kind of too much house, and they have a lot of equity, right? They've got a lot of equity locked up in their real estate. And, really what we're just talking to people about is, hey, how can you unlock some of that equity? Do you have a double-sized lot? Could you subdivide? Could you partition the house? Not everybody's going to want to do that. But, like where I grew up, I sort of look at New Hampshire, and, if you were to look in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, you went back in time when we were kids and growing up and stuff, similar kind of situation, right? Lots of like houses that were really big. But as the demographics changed, what you had is a lot of these places got cut up into apartments, got cut up into condos. And frankly, it preserved a lot of really beautiful housing stock that instead of having, 1 5-bedroom, captain's, house or something, it's like, look, there's 4 different families that are living in this place that are all contributing to the historic upkeep of this property. It's beautiful. I mean, I don't know if you've been to Portsmouth, New Hampshire lately, but it's like, it's so gorgeous. And what's happened over time is then now they have a lot of new construction, right? A lot of the industrial space or whatever, developers are coming in and they're turning those into beautiful sort of luxury, kinds of lifestyle living. But it's created a space where now we can have all kinds, we need everything, right? We need the affordable housing. We need some smaller spaces where these 1 and 2 bedroom families can live, right? And then we're going to have on the luxe end, you'll have some of that as well. But without, the zoning, right? This is one of the big discussions that you have. So the other big movement towards abundance, there was a book written. So my first introduction was the Vermont Futures Project. But then in the spring, there was a book written by Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson of the New York Times and the Atlantic called, it's Abundance is what it's called. But they basically go through and just talk about how we created an environment where housing is almost impossible, right? Like we created zoning rules, we created historic protections. We created a lot of things that at the time, there was good reason to do it. There was a lot of good reasons to do what we did. But now we've created a situation that's really difficult to work our way out of now that we have this housing crisis. And so basically the solution to that, they just point this out. It's in our hands. Like we just have to decide to reform. Like getting a permit means we're giving you permission. Like let's just make it easier for you to get a permit to do something that's going to create value and create housing and give people a place to live. Is
that being done in Vermont?
Yeah, people are doing it. And frankly, the legislature, we really should look to, both the governor and the legislature at, the Act 250 reforms that have happened, the CHIP legislation that was passed last year. There's a lot of that's the Community Housing Infrastructure Program, which will, similar to a TIF, it'll be like mini TIF, right? You can have future revenues can offset infrastructure, projects that need to happen before you're going to see housing created. But they've sort of forced communities to say, look, everybody can build an ADU in the state of Vermont. Everybody can. It doesn't matter what your zoning says. If you want to put an accessory dwelling unit and create a space for somebody to live, whether that's an in-law that needs a place or whether that's, just providing housing and renting something out to somebody that wouldn't have a space otherwise, everybody can do that. And any lot with city water and sewer can have 4 units, right? So most of our zoning was skewed towards single family occupancy. That's what it was really written towards. It was sort of written to protect that. And the state came in and said, look, you guys can do whatever else you want, but you're going to do these things. You're going to allow accessory dwelling units. The state of California was one of the first to really go that direction. I think they passed their legislation on ADUs in like 2020, around that time frame. ADUs are now 20% of all building projects in the state of California. They just needed to unlock this. They needed to create an environment where people could, and frankly, if you ever look at the coolest designs of tiny homes, they're all California companies now because they've created a demand.
I was going to ask about the tiny home movement and if it is still alive and well nationally.
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes, so the legislation is the enabler, and California did that.
Yeah.
And pricing, like, all you got to do is look at home prices in California and know, hey,
Sure.
most young couples that try to move out there are not going to be able to afford to live in a $1.5 million 800 square foot ranch house.
Sure.
That doesn't work, right? But can they live in a tiny home in somebody's backyard? Yes, they can. And so, to me, what it takes, I think, what you see getting to this 20% of all building permits or ADUs, first the legislation happens, which we did a couple years ago in Vermont. Then you have to have some people start doing it, right? And so if you build an apartment above your garage, people, probably what's going to happen now, it's less controversial today, but in the past you would have had your neighbors show up and oppose you. This is what would have happened. I'm just telling you. They might love you. You guys may be best friends and have barbecues, but you say, I'm going to do this project in my backyard. Your neighbors are all going to show up at the hearing and they're going to be like, it's going to create all this traffic and they're going to run over my kids on their way to school. It's going to create noise. Right. Again, now that it's all right, you're going to have less of that. But what's actually going to happen is when you build that apartment above your garage and now your mother-in-law lives there, right? And they meet your mother-in-law and they're like, she's or whoever it is, right? They meet the new neighbor and they love them. They're going to start saying, hey, this isn't such a bad thing. Maybe I can do this above my garage.
Yeah.
Maybe I can put a tiny home in my backyard, right? And then it creates this, what you're seeing in California, where the industry will flock here because they'll be like, look, people are building these and there's a demand.
Sure. Here in Vermont, the tiny home movement, a good friend of mine, Newton Wells, was like, I'm jumping on this, man. I'm going to do this. Newt, how big is your home?
Hey, good morning. 430 square feet.
Oh, I love it.
And what is it, 16 by 20?
Yeah, 16 by 20, so 320 square feet on the main floor, and then there's another 100 feet in the loft.
All right. What made you decide to do this here in Vermont, buddy?
Vermont had just barely enacted that law when I did it. I think I was the first one in my town to do it because I went to get the permit at the town at a meeting with one of the town boards, and they had not heard of that before, so I had to bring in the law with me and explain it. But I decided to do it because, with that new law, I was like, wow, I could build myself a small cabin to live in, and not have to buy another lot. I did have to do a new septic and another well to meet that requirement, but at least I didn't have to buy another chunk of land, which is the whole purpose of this auxiliary dwelling law. It enables people to build another dwelling on a lot that otherwise would only contain one dwelling, because a lot of towns have 2-acre zoning. Some of them have different requirements, but in my town it's 2-acre zoning, and so it's one house on a 2-acre lot. And so the auxiliary dwelling law enables people to have the one house plus the auxiliary dwelling, which can be in a separate building. It doesn't have to be an apartment within the main building.
What's your heating costs, your utilities?
Oh, the utilities are almost nothing. I mean, we did this with I built this house in like '09, and it it I remember ordering the wall and ceiling panels. It's a timber frame with super insulated panel walls. And
Stress skin, right?
yeah, I think that's another term for them. And so I ordered it at the time when gas had just for the first time gone to over $4 a gallon. And I figured, well, if this is the future of buying fuel, I want to spend a little extra money on really good insulation. So I've got I think if I remember correctly, the walls are 8-inch thick. It's polystyrene, and the ceiling is 12-inch polystyrene. So in 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 a year, I might burn through 200 gallons of propane, and that runs the radiant floors in the basement and the main floor, and it runs the propane for the range and the water heater.
And you rigged up a solar panel too.
Yeah, we've got a solar panel out back. Um, the solar panel is this. It's funny. I just recently did the math on the solar panel, and the payback on those is a whole lot longer than what was promoted at the time. Um, Given the opportunity to do that again, I don't think I would. But
Interesting.
yeah, it's like a lot of this stuff that gets promoted as really highly efficient, like heat pumps and things. We I put heat pumps in a 3-bedroom house that I rent out, and that uh the system went in, and the first January and February that I ran it, by the end of January, I got a letter from the Morristown Water and Light that said, if you consume this much electricity again next month, we're going to put you in commercial rates, and your electric rates will triple. Um, so, I had to stop running the heat pumps in the winter.
Wow.
We
Wow.
took the controls off them.
Listen, I think you recognize that not everybody can do this. You don't have any kids. You have a
Correct.
very, very, very small family. But are you hopeful that Vermont is going to get more on this wave of the tiny home movement? I know that there's pods and things being built. In Chittenden County? Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the pods in Chittenden County are these little manufactured things that the city has erected on a parking lot for like transitional housing for homeless people to have a more stable place before they get into a regular apartment or something. Um, but yeah, I mean, the tiny homes are great. I think what Morristown did after I built my house, they changed the law. So the state law says that the town has to allow it, and has to allow up to 30% the size of the main house to which the auxiliary dwelling is subordinate. Um, but the towns have the right, the state law gives each town the right to adjust those laws, make them laxer if they want to, so that if they want to allow a larger auxiliary dwelling, then they can do so. And the last time I checked, which was a couple of years ago, a few years ago, the town had changed it so that I could have built my auxiliary dwelling twice as big as I did. But of course that, it's not it. I could change it now, but I'd have to do all kinds of work to, double the size of the building. It would
Sure.
not be easy. But so I mean that's good, and I think that auxiliary dwellings are great as long as they can be a little bigger than what I built. I mean, what I built is fantastic, but it's a little tight. I mean, I think, had I had the opportunity, I would have made it a little bigger than I did.
Yeah.
Um, you know, having a mud room would have been great. Having a kitchen that's a little bigger would have been really fantastic, and even having room for a dining room table instead of just a kitchen countertop with stools would be really nice too.
How many people live
So
there?
just two.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think this is, this is a thanks for the call in. What you hear from in the downsizing discussion, which is part of this, how do you unlock equity? There are people who would move out of their main house and move into an ADU, but they don't want to move into that 400 square foot kind of situation because of those things that were just described, right?
Yeah.
That
Right.
they'd like
Yes.
something that, is suitable for them. So it's maybe going to be more like 800 square feet. And again, the ADU law will allow that. It depends on the size of the primary home. But I think that there are some issues. Like, is 400 square feet going to be enough for everybody? Maybe
Right.
not. But it is an option, right? I think having
It is.
a whole ecosystem of housing is important.
Yeah.
It is. The one problem with the ADU thing is that you're building a much smaller dwelling, and the fixed costs of site work, septic, well, concrete, all of that is pretty much the same.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
you know, regardless of whether it's 400, 800, or 1,500 square feet. So, the cost per square foot increases dramatically when you build a really small auxiliary dwelling. So, I mean, I think these laws are changing for a reason, and that's a good thing. They're making the state and the different towns are making it easier for people to build larger auxiliary dwellings, which really I think is the solution
Yeah.
because of the cost aspect and the practicality aspect.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks, Snoop.
Thank you.
Yeah,
You
man.
I've always been a big proponent of all of these things, but having done the heat pumps and the solar panels and the auxiliary dwelling, these are things that I would the points I mentioned are things that I would really reconsider having done it all once.
Huh. Interesting stuff. This and this home, I would love to show it to you, Gabe. If we ever have time to grab a cup of coffee and run up there, man, you just wouldn't believe it. It's just absolutely beautiful, beautiful. And I know that there was some discussion about Barry having some tiny homes. I think Tom Lozon even had a couple of them built not too long ago.
Did he? Okay. I didn't know that. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things with it too. So accessory dwelling unit laws, what those allow. There's another issue of, like, when we think about the tiny home movement, if you went out and just Google tiny homes and you were looking to buy something and you didn't want to have to hire a contractor to build something, you have to really look at your local laws, because a lot of these would not be legal in our communities, right? If there's zoning, if you're in a community with zoning, in Montpelier, for example, currently, you couldn't buy most of these off-the-shelf tiny homes because they're not built to the same housing standard as traditional construction, right?
You can buy one at Home Depot.
Yeah, you could buy one at Home Depot, but if you don't meet all the same requirements as a stick-built house on site, it's not going to be permitted, right? So to go buy, there's a great Vermont company. Boy, I wish I should have had the name of these guys, but they're building these on-wheel kind of accessory dwelling units that are meant for people that have they're handy. They need to be handicap accessible, right? So, hey, you became paralyzed, or you had some health issue that requires you to be in a wheelchair. How do you sort of get around? So if you're a parent and you have this happen to a kid, or it happens to an in-law or something, right? Your parents, what do? Well, you can just drop this on a property, right? You can buy one of these units and drop it on your property, but it won't meet most of our zoning rules because it wasn't built to that standard. Most of them are built the old, they called them park models, right? They're basically built to the RV standard, right? They're on wheels with a chassis that can move around and not be permanent housing. But in most of our communities, I think in Montpelier, for example, maybe you got 120 days that you could have somebody there.
Yeah.
It's considered camping, right? And so it's like, well, without some zoning reform, people couldn't even, like, you want to put a yurt in your backyard and let somebody live there. In a lot of our communities, that would be illegal.
Huh. Yeah, we were just up and down Route 1 on the coast of Maine near Wells, and some of those park models, I mean, it's just beautiful.
Oh, yeah, gorgeous, right?
Beautiful.
Some of these yurts are beautiful. I mean, there's a
Yurts.
lot, there's a place that has park models over in Stowe. They're actually renting them. They're hospitality units. And they're gorgeous. They're these little A-frames. They're
Yeah.
beautiful, right? But again, could you put one in your backyard? It depends on where you live.
You know, also on Route 1, we saw they were taking containers,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Container homes. Yeah.
stacking them on top of each other, putting some siding on them, and they're beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's a permit.
Yeah.
What do we want to allow?
Yes.
If we really feel we have a crisis, are we willing to make space for neighbors so that they can have a place to live?
Yeah.
And these are the debates that we again, austerity or abundance. What do we want to have?
Yeah.
Why should everybody show up because you want to put an apartment above your garage? Why do all your neighbors in that moment want to show up and be like,
Right.
this is terrible. You're going to, the stories, if you go to any of these hearings, right, like the stories that you hear, it's traumatic. A lot of people don't even want to go. They're like, oh man, I have to go to one of those hearings. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even want to, I don't even want to
know.
deal with that. I'm going to need a therapist when I'm done.
Yeah, and again, if you haven't explored the Abundance Agenda podcast, my host is Gabe Lajeunesse, and he started this podcast right here in Central Vermont. And you've had some amazing content in just a short period of time. You started this thing a couple of months ago, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Just getting going, just trying to figure out.
What made you say, I'm doing this?
I feel like going through these processes where you see, again, a minority of voices stopping, development in communities, right? So in Montpelier right now, there's a new development team that's there. They're trying to do 2 4-plex projects, one for Capstone Community Action, and another one for Habitat for Humanity. Both agencies that we're like, these are good people. These are good people doing good things. Neighbors have appealed their project. They have to go to environmental court. It's like, why? Why? And so it's, and then watching again, the Green Mountain Care Board and the discussions of our hospital, like 14 hospitals potentially closing, and housing is identified as the number one issue. It just seems like we need to create more education so people can understand. And frankly, the solution is not just a big developer coming in here and doing everything. The answer is a lot of small developers saying, yeah, I'm going to put an ADU in my backyard. Yeah, I'm going to, carve up this property and turn it into 3 apartments. Yeah, I'm going to, it's going to take a bunch of us to do a lot of small things to really make a difference. I'll say this too. So if you look at TIF or you look at this new program, CHIP, that was just passed this last year, those things are going to harness the tax revenues.
What's that stand for again, Chip?
It's Community Housing Infrastructure Program.
Okay.
And it's very similar to tax increment finance, where basically they're gonna grab the property tax revenues over the next 20 years to pay down that bond. But that's also something to think about. So yes, we're gonna get those big projects done now that we hope would happen on their own, but aren't, because infrastructure is just too expensive to for people to invest in and make happen, right, from a pure commercial market rate standpoint.
Yeah.
But you think about it, that full property tax roll isn't going to hit until 20 years from now. Whereas if you put an ADU on your property, right, or you subdivide, you have a double lot and you sell that other lot and somebody builds a new house, immediately that's on the tax rolls, right? So all those small developments, what you're seeing in California, that 20% of building permits being for these accessory dwelling units, all these small movements and incremental value, that's going to increase our tax base, which is what we really need. We need a bigger tax base. We need more people here working. We need more workers, right? Like, that's the big thing. 200,000 workers, right? We need more young people to want to live here and want to work.
Amen. Again, today, polls are open till 7 o'clock tonight on Election Day up at the Barry Auditorium to vote for Article 1, which is a 2-point, different bond votes here. There's mainly three: the Central Vermont Career Center, and of course Article 2, the $3.3 million needed to get the Public Works building up to code, and the $2.4 million for infrastructure to support the Stevens Branch Apartments. Seminary Street is what we really know that to be, which is 31 flood-resilient affordable housing units developed by Downstreet Housing. It says here, bringing new residents to the heart of the city to increase vibrancy to shops, restaurants, and schools, improved public parking, expanded green space, repaving on West Street, which is horrible, debt service payments paid with TIF, generated from increased downtown property values, not as an increase to the tax rate. So,
Yeah, pretty important issues.
yeah, really important stuff. I mean, people are, and you've heard this plenty of times, I don't need to tell you, people are alarmed right now by a lot of things, the cost of living and inflation, and this is going up and that's going up. And the elderly here in our state with aging homes, our sewer and water rates, the list goes on and on. We can't afford this. We can't afford it. I'm already tapped out enough as it is. And now you're asking me to increase my taxes even more to support a $149 million career center. I can't afford this.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of affordability issues, right? And the issue is, do we want to reverse it, or are we just going to continue down the path that we're on? And the only way to reverse it, again, I would just point people to that Vermont Futures Project study. The data's all there. It just shows we need the couple 100,000 workers. What's it going to take to get young people to move here, get young people to stay here, right? I mean, here's the thing. Like, if you go out and you try, like, you have any project. I just did this little, I needed a little bathroom project done, right? You try to go find somebody to do a little project. I know. I talked about this yesterday with Larry. You try to get somebody to do a big project.
I know.
Big project. You know, what's happened is we have fewer workers than we've ever had. We've had a bunch of federal dollars, frankly, from the flooding that really, you know, like we got to $500. You go look at, I mean, you know, I love the Downstreet projects. I love all these affordable housing projects, you know, but they're like coming at $550 a square foot. Right? I mean, that's where we've gotten to. I'm building actively with my brother over in New Hampshire, and I'll tell you, all in, our costs are like $200 a square foot because they don't have the labor crisis that we have over here, right? It's like there's just nobody to do the work. And so they can cherry pick, you know, and good for them, but we need more young people to come in here to start businesses, to be willing to work.
Gabe, are you a state rep?
I am not.
You hold no political office?
I'm on some, I have some appointed positions that I serve in.
Have you been under the Golden Dome at any point recently to voice some of this?
I mean, I've been over there. I don't know that I've lobbied extensively, if that's what you're asking. No.
You should.
Yeah. I mean, we are having some really good work done. I will say the legislature, you know, again, this chip was a big deal. The Act 250 reform was a big deal. There's some good work being done over there, but certainly we need more voices talking about that.
Yeah, I mean, the comments that are coming in, Vermont's becoming unaffordable to live in. We're trying to increase our population, not force them out because of the fact that it's unaffordable. We won't need workers because we won't need to build anything.
Exactly. Right. That's the other alternative, right? Is we just, you know, who can afford to live here?
What would you say if you had an hour to sit down and have a cup of coffee with Phil Scott?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, it's interesting watching the governor and watching the legislature and the direction they've taken. You know, you have from, you know, an outsider looking at, I think we all look at this, you know, we can just talk about healthcare as an example, or education's another good one too, but let's just talk about healthcare for a second. we've got really good data that says our hospitals are going to go bankrupt, most of them, that services are going to be cut, right? And what's being done, and so the legislature, there was a big bill that was passed last year. I don't know that much. You look at, well, what got done? There was an education bill that was passed last year. Well, what got done? Did we actually do anything to make anything more affordable? And it just seems like there's a little bit of follow the herd. You have to do something. Like, we have to do something, and so, like, bad legislation is better than no legislation. I don't know if that's. I don't know. I'm not over there, so I don't know. I don't know if that's really the case. If we're not actually saving money, solving the problem, like, why don't we take our time? Why don't we work on something that's, why don't we take a couple years and figure out what's really going to work instead of passing bills? Are we really going to save any money out of this? We certainly are going to consolidate some schools. We're certainly going to have some school closures. We're certainly going to have some hospital closures. Are we fixing the problem? There was something in the healthcare bill, reference-based pricing, although it doesn't come online for a couple of years. But that was one thing that actually did get into the legislation that will affect affordability. So that piece was pretty good.
Reference-based pricing?
Yes, the idea of reference-based pricing is, look, Medicaid only pays a certain amount or Medicare only pays a certain amount for certain procedures. We will only reimburse you some certain percentage over what that rate is. We're not going to pay you any more than that. So therefore, hospitals and insurers figure out how to make those numbers work. We're not going to overpay for procedures that you're doing in Vermont. Wow. So that's part of it. I think, I don't know, again, I'm not an expert on healthcare. I'm a housing guy, but I just think these are issues. I think we need to continue to work on housing. We need to continue to, bolster. I mean, again, there was a great program the governor sponsored a couple years ago, Missing Middle. There was a program that they sponsored, 10% for Vermont, which was to take some of the state reserves and make them available at low interest loans, all things that would be repaid, but low interest that could make housing projects more affordable. Continuing to do those kinds of things. And then really we need to look at what it's going to take to attract talent here.
Newton, you are, you're still with us. What would you say to Phil if you had a chance to sit down with him and chew the fat for an hour?
That's a good question. But I mean, I would encourage people to boy, there's lots of things I'd like to say to Phil Scott, I guess, but I would encourage more of this auxiliary dwelling stuff, and I think that loosening the laws so that people can make better use of land that's already developed it's a great idea. I mean, we're gonna have we're gonna have a house on 2 acres, going up and down a street. Every 2 acres, another building. You might as well just double it at this point, if you can. But because it prevents the sprawl problem that we had back when zoning throughout the state, 30 years ago was 10-acre lots. So it ate up a whole lot of former farmland with one little house on every 10 acres. It's crazy.
Good stuff. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for thanks for being with us this morning, pal. I appreciate you, man. Gabe Lajeunesse is our guest this morning, the Abundance Agenda podcast. How often are you shooting this thing?
It's when I have an idea and when I think I can get the right people together. So I think it's been about every other week is what I've done. I think the next angle I want to go down is I want to talk to some tiny home developers, and actually put some product up so people can kind of think about it. And to your guest's point, it is true, right? The challenge of the infrastructure and all that, those costs, it's not cheap. Like, you can't, again, if you take, you get a park model, that may be the cheapest sort of option, but again, it's not legal in most places. If you're going to build a structure, you're going to spend some money to do it. One of the shows I had really got into the numbers and showed that, look, I mean, if the numbers work out, it's going to get funded, right? You're going to be able to get funding for that. But I want to show some product, right? Let's get some cool product up that people can kind of take a look at and see who some of these developers are, where you might be able to get some solutions for stuff like that. But I think that's the next series that I'm going to work on.
Listen, today's your day to cast your vote. It's election day. Locally here, there's some really big ticket items that are up for grabs here. Statewide, Nationally, we're going to be watching the forecast here is going to be very interesting to see how things unfold in New Jersey and New York. By the way, we had a report of some bomb threats at some of the polling stations in New Jersey this morning. So hopefully they've got that situation under control. But here locally, the auditorium is open till 7 o'clock tonight. Please get yourself up there if you haven't yet. If you need a ride, reach out. There's plenty of folks in town that will get you up to cast your vote. This is so important. Again, Seminary Street, one of the big ticket items. Article 1, the $2.4 million needed for infrastructure to support that 31-unit building. And Article 2, $3.3 million to get our public works garage up and functioning. Less than $8 a month, I think, is what our city manager, Nicholas Storelli Castro, said on the air when he was here a short time ago. There's some really big things that are needed. Our water treatment facility. I mean, the list goes on.
I mean, you look at we drive around, like, we see the infrastructure grades across the United States. We got roads and bridges with D's. I mean, I don't know how anything in Vermont gets anything but an F. Like, our infrastructure is terrible. And yeah, it takes investment to fix any of this stuff. But what are we passing on to our kids? Like, it's just crazy to me that we are not spending money on fixing things that need to be fixed, that we're doing that we're not doing the right kind of engineering. We're doing things that we know we're going to get destroyed and going to need, more millions of dollars poured into them. Do it right the first time. The Agency of Transportation does a great job on the state highways, but our municipalities don't invest the money. It's like, look, guys, it's going to get you. Like, being cheap costs you more in the end. Yeah. Let's just invest what it takes to have, what is it that we want to build? And let's invest what it takes to have what we want.
Fascinating. I wish we could hear that echoed a little bit more, what you just said. And that's why you started this podcast, I think. Your voice is getting out there. You're already getting people that are paying attention to the Abundance Agenda podcast, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Listen, man, my microphones are yours. I know you got your own, but I invite you to come back in here any damn time you want. You're talking about some of the most important stuff that our cities, our towns needs to be discussing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and thank you for the good work you're doing. I mean, you're bringing a local voice to local issues every day of the week. Yeah, pretty awesome.
Thanks, Gabe. I really appreciate your time, man. Come back soon.
Thank you.
Let's see how things pan out here after today.
Sounds good.
And see what the temperature is in another couple of weeks on housing. This issue is not going to be going away tomorrow.
It's not going away tomorrow. No
way.
We're not working our way out of this doom loop tomorrow.
Buckle up, my friend.
That's right.
You got a lot of stuff to talk about on the Abundance Agenda. Yeah. A lot. And I look forward to following it and listening to it. Catch it in the car, catch it on the go, no matter where you are. If you're making dinner at night, just turn it on, have it on, listen, pay attention. This guy right here is really shaking it up, and nobody else is doing it here in Central Vermont. Gabe Lajeunesse, the Abundance Agenda podcast. Check it out. Thanks so much, man.
Thank you, sir.
All right.